Good morning. My name is Maria Luisa Palma. I'm speaking on behalf of Oleada, Inc., a nonprofit organization, and on behalf of the taxpayers. So I'm here to continue our discussion on this open question. What will be the district's future facilities needs based on our continuing decreasing enrollment? The $80 billion in unmet facilities needs continues to be thrown around at the district. We've received this new slide now that kind of throws out some little tiny bits of information. It was thrown out at the board retreat on April 2nd, saying some very high-level numbers of the number of classrooms and school buildings that will need to have work done. No dollar amounts, no dollars on here. It's literally one page, one slide. Mr. Carvalho and Mr. Schmerlson have gone on the record being interviewed talking about the potential need for consolidation. Mr. Carvalho has said maybe they will consolidate programs. Mr. Schmerlson has contemplated closing schools. This article here, which I will leave for you in the LA School Report, and the 74 million speaks to that extensively. There's also a very interesting report called Crisis in the Schoolhouse, which is quoted here. Which measures drops in attendance historically over a long period of time. I will leave these two for you to review. Also, very curiously, some of the parents I know mentioned to me, and I noticed, the two sad schools in the Palisades that unfortunately were a total loss. Those two elementary schools somehow were managed to be fit into two other elementary schools in the neighborhood. How did that happen? That means that there was apparently excess space sitting in those other two elementary schools. Something to look into. The strategic execution plan doesn't mention anything about these drops in attendance and where any projections may be going in terms of that, and how that would change the need for renovations. The sources of funds in that plan do not include any mention of the surplus land that the district is sitting on. That's not mentioned as a potential source of cash. But of course, there is a lot of mention, if you watch the Facilities and Procurement Board Subcommittee and the Committee of the Whole, of developing workforce housing. A total of over 50 properties have been identified as surplus land that they are contemplating and apparently are going full steam ahead. By June, about 9 of them have definitive plans to move forward with developing the workforce housing. But the fact is, one little piece of information they don't tell you clearly. They're going to be donating the land as a zero-cost land lease. So that's another issue that you may all want to look into. Because how can the members of this committee, how can you effectively perform prudent analysis and recommendations on the use of the bond funds if you don't have complete information on what are the resources available? What does this district own? I remind you in your MOU, which of course has not yet been updated, it says that you are to reflect wise and efficient use of limited land and public resources and to ensure that the bond measures are expended as voters intended. But if you don't have information, are you expending resources on facilities that the district won't need in a few years? That's the question as a taxpayer that I would like answered. Now, when we move over to the bond audit that was done and that was presented somewhat to you here at the last meeting, I agree with Ms. Yee, and I want to hear more accountant talk. I think at this district, we are sorely missing accountant talk, and I want to hear more of that detailed discussion of dollars. I agree completely. The public needs to see the long-term liabilities front and center. We need to know how much is outstanding and how much is available under the different bond measures. In terms of the findings on the indirect costs, I'm very concerned on that whole discussion. I think there are additional questions that should be asked. Were those issues systemic? Why did those indirect cost issues come up? What was the district not doing that allowed that to happen? Are these one-off issues, or is it a deficiency in internal controls? And I think they need to be questioned in depth about what was their assessment on that. How were they satisfied at the end of that audit practice to be able to say they had an unqualified opinion? And then specifically in terms of what was presented in that little presentation that they do, which I think doesn't really hit on the high notes and what should be in a presentation for you, they missed the part where it says what they asked the district to do. They miss writing in there. When you look at the actual audit, they only asked them to review for each of the purchases identified. They didn't tell them to go back and look at all of their process on indirect costs. So they only asked them to check out those 6 instances that they identified, but you weren't told what the sample size was. This is based on their sampling. So if they only looked at 6 transactions and 6 transactions were wrong and you were overbilled, that's a serious problem. So what is it that you can do as the Bond Oversight Committee to ensure that the bond proceeds are used as the voters intended? And so please continue your work. We appreciate the work you're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you, and we appreciate you being here and your comments.